2020 disaster film starring Gerard, Butler, Morena, Baccarin, and Scott Glenn, and was directed by Rick Romanois. The story centers around one family that is desperately trying to find a way to safety when a comet is headed towards Earth and is set to strike within the day. There is an interesting aspect to this movie where the government is shown to have a plan in place for when something of this magnitude is going to happen. It's described several times during the movie as going to be an extinction level event, and that there is this plan in place where there are people that have been selected for survival and to be relocated to a facility where they will hopefully survive. And people are selected based on their occupations, and also their families can go with them provided that they don't have any kind of chronic illness or disease or anything like that. And one of those selected people is the film's main character, played by Gerard Butler. And he plays a man named John Garrity, and he is an engineer, someone who builds skyscrapers, he says. And I think Gerard Butler was very good in the movie. I know that he's in quite a few movies. I've seen some of them, and I have enjoyed some of them. I know his movies aren't always that well beloved by the critics, but I think he did an excellent job here. I think he's a very believable, very grounded character. And that can be said of the whole movie, actually. I think it's all very realistic. I mean, as realistic as you can be in a story like this. But I think it's all played as real as possible, and his performance goes right into that as well. His character falls into what I think must be a disaster movie trope. I haven't seen lots of disaster movies, but just basing off the main character from San Andreas or Tom Cruise's character from War of the Worlds, Gerard Butler's character is also a man who is separated from his family, and a big focal point of the movie is him trying to bring his family back together and trying to save them. At the start of the movie, we establish that they have been separated for, it seems like, not very long. There's very evident tension and awkwardness between them, but he is allowed to come back to the house to spend time with their son and get ready for the son's birthday party, which is the next day. And the fact that they start the story together plays into it, because when he is initially alerted, he gets a presidential alert on his phone that he's been selected for survival with his family. And that scene, I think, was very well done. He gets the alert in a store out in public, and he's looking around and realizing that he's the only one getting this. They've been hearing about this comet that's supposed to pass Earth, but not the fact that it possibly is going to hit Earth. And he's looking around and realizing that no one else is getting the alert that he's getting. And it's just a very kind of chilling scene, and his performance was very good in it, and really just sets it up for a really emotional story, and you're invested right away. As I said, he's a very believable, grounded character, and that carries on throughout the movie. He never is shown with any kind of superhuman abilities that you wouldn't think an average man would have. That carries on, and I always enjoy that, the everyman quality, the relatable character, and that's what he is. And there's never any hidden talents for flying a helicopter or super strong or anything like that. It's all an average man trying to do his best in a terrifying situation. Morena Baccarin plays his wife, Allison, and I think she too is also very, very good in the movie. I think her character is just shown to be very strong and very capable and calm. I think that's really important, because I think a risk that disaster movies can run is having too many characters being shown as becoming unglued or panicking. And while that's probably realistic for real people, I think when you're watching a movie, it's important to have your main characters as people that you can watch and be inspired by them. And I think she does very well in that role. Early on, though, when they first get the news that they have been selected, it's at the start of their son's birthday party. Their neighbors are all over at their house, and suddenly everyone's realizing that just the three of them have gotten this alert and no one else has. And it quickly shows that feeling of guilt, especially in her character. Gerard Butler's character is much more focused on trying to get them to safety, but that guilty conscience that she has is depicted really well, I think. Her character is just shown as being very brave, and trying to protect their son is the main priority. It's also shown early on in the movie that their son has diabetes, and that's not known when they've been selected, but when the three of them make it to the Air Force Base, I think, where they're all supposed to be put on planes with everyone else that's been selected to be taken off to bunkers that are located in where the movie gets its title from, in Greenland, then they become separated because John needs to leave to get the insulin for their son, and as he's gone, it's realized by the soldiers manning the base that there is someone going to get on the plane that has diabetes and has a chronic illness, and that makes him ineligible to go with John. So it's at that point that the mother and son and the father they are separated for a large chunk of the movie after that. And her character very much has to defend their son and trying to get more medication for him because they haven't met up with John, and just trying to get rides for them. They've decided they're going to meet at her father's house in Kentucky, and she is left to protect him alone. I think she's a really good character, and she gives a great performance. Their son is played by Roger Dale Floyd, and he's an excellent child actor. I think he brought so much emotion to the movie, and I think they did a good job in avoiding showing the child character as being annoying or whiny, which I think an audience will be on the kid's side typically anyway, but I think showing a kid that is mostly just scared, not a pain. I know that can come up in movies with central child characters, and avoiding that was a really good decision, and he just gave such a great performance. This movie does such a great job of making us relate to and feel for all the characters, the main characters, and I think that's so important. One major thing I need to point out is that they aren't shown making stupid decisions. I think you can very quickly lose an audience if they're questioning, well, why would you do that? Why would you say that? Why would you trust that person? And the characters sometimes find themselves in situations that they did not expect in this movie, but the way they get out of it, I think, is handled as a real person would, but not making some crazy judgment about it that gets them into even worse trouble. What I'm hinting at there is that once they've been at the airbase, everyone who is allowed to get on the plane is given a wristband, and that is quickly shown to be something that puts them in danger later on, because other people that didn't get that alert, they've become aware of the people that have, and that they all have this wristband, and that's what's going to allow them on the plane. And that quickly becomes a dangerous commodity that the people around them are wanting. That story element of just regular, average people turning on each other and thinking only of themselves, I think has become not so far-fetched after the events of the last couple of years. It also quickly shows the situation devolving into looting and rioting, and there too, all very relatable images that we've seen on the news. And I think it's unfortunate, but it's realistic. But the movie does offer a balanced view. Not everyone is shown that way, thankfully. There are good people in there that are trying to help each other out and protect each other, and not just looking out for themselves and trying to selfishly survive any way they can, but also trying to help those around them. And I think it's definitely more, the scale is weighted in favor of the bad people in the movie as a whole, but showing that there are good people that will shine through in situations like that was a really important and good decision. Getting back to the main character's marriage relationship, I think that was all depicted very well. As I mentioned, they become separated from each other for a large portion of the movie, and that separation I think is actually helpful for them as they realize how much they actually need each other, and that the fact that they were split up when the movie begins is not what they really want, that they do rely on and need each other. And the movie makes a point of bringing them back together. And as we're leading up to that moment, it's showing, close-ups on especially John's wedding ring, and showing both of them when they're talking to people, he referring to his wife and she referring to her husband. And that they're saying that without hesitation, that is natural, and that it is hinting that they are going to put aside the problems that led to them breaking up, and that they are going to get back together. And I think that was just shown really well and was kind of a heartwarming part of this movie. I think the story is just so focused and never stops moving once the disaster gets underway. It doesn't waste any time cutting to the military or to scientists analyzing the situation or anything like that. It's all focused on our main characters. And any information that the audience gets, we're getting at the same time as the characters do. So we're just totally invested in their story and hoping that they can make it through this, even as things are looking more and more dire. You also feel just as in the dark and unprepared for this situation as the characters do, because they're just hearing little bits whispered from other people and little glimpses of things on the news of what are happening. And all of that just carries you along with it and results in a very engaging movie. Another part that keeps you quite riveted to the story is there's a major ticking clock element, and that is how much time they have left to make it to these bunkers before the largest piece of the comet hits Earth. And because they missed their first plane after they get split up and the sun wasn't allowed on the plane at the airbase, they have to find another way to get there. And one of these whispered rumors they hear is that there are unofficial planes leaving from Canada, and that can take them to Greenland, and then hopefully they'll be let in. And I will say it was a little hard to follow sometimes just how much time they did have left. It's said a few times, how many hours they have left and how long it's going to take them to get there, and it was a little bit hard to keep up with. Do they still have a chance? Like, even if they get to a plane in Canada, is there any hope for them? Didn't affect the enjoyment of the movie at all. It was just, sometimes I did get a little bit lost. The film is largely shot in a handheld or shaky cam style, which I don't always like in action movies, but I didn't mind it. I liked it here, actually. I think it added urgency and built tension for the story. The lighting was quite eerie, with the sky becoming more and more reddish orange as places that have been hit are on fire, and that whole kind of looming threat just on the horizon also added to the suspense and the feeling of dread that they might not make it. I really think the special effects were very well integrated. The movie's not a CGI extravaganza by any means. I think that's really important in a movie like this, to limit the amount of destruction the audience is seeing. Because if you don't, it can quickly turn into the audience feeling desensitized to it all. That it's all just scenes of cities toppling. That just numbs you to it, and it loses any gravity it could have. But early on, when you see on the news one piece of the comet hitting a city, it is shown as devastating, and showing that the characters are just reacting to it on the news. They're not just surrounded by it and then they just keep running afterwards. That it's just, they're removed from it, but the weight of the situation is hitting them and hitting us at the same time. But after that, they're not shown, having to drive through a city as it's exploding around them or something. Of course, there are lots of visual effects, but the focus is never taken away by them from the human story. The focus is always on that, and the effects and the the disaster that's happening at a distance and then slowly getting closer is always in service of that story. Similarly, I don't think it's very easy for movies to show a truly spectacular explosion anymore. But here, there is a scene when a gigantic plane blows up that really knocked me back a little bit. Just the epic scope of that shot. And there too, it's not too much, but it really is startling and terrifying for all the people that are there. And the events leading up to that, just that explosion really caps off a scene that gets pretty wild at that point. And I think it was just very impressive. I also wanted to mention that Scott Glenn plays Morena Baccarin's character's father. And I'm a big fan of Silverado. I've watched that movie more times than I can count. And it always kind of surprises me a little bit seeing that he has aged quite a bit. But I think he is just perfect casting for that kind of tough, older man, kind of that rugged rancher character. I think it looks like he lives on a ranch. Just a really good actor, and I appreciated him in this movie. I think this movie just had such a really great family message. Also showing the power of forgiveness. We learn as the movie goes on how their marriage fell apart initially, and it is largely his fault. But just seeing her taking him back and them coming together and putting aside these other issues, I think was just a really great thing to see, and kind of refreshing seeing a family together. And I just really appreciated that part of it. It's kind of hard to call a movie like this a fun movie, but I did enjoy it, and I think it's really well made. As I said at the beginning, I'm no authority on disaster movies, so this movie could be absolutely rife with cliches and tropes, but even if it is, I think they're really well used here. And when you take a really good story and really great performances, these actors really seem to be giving it their all, I think it can be really effective, and it is. And I really did enjoy it. So if you're in the mood for a really engaging, well-acted story, I think you should check out Greenland. Highly recommended. Thanks for checking out this review. If you enjoyed it, please check back to my channel, Hildebrand Productions. Adios for now.